Okay, hello everybody. Today we are here to cover the sampling process that we'll be using for the MISX sample that we have. This will be used as a generic sampling process to get us through the majority of our sampling until we have specific apps for each different test code. So for now, we'll be using a generic application following this workflow. In the start, we sample, it moves to a CA review from our typical sample data collection, and then it moves on to the lab to do an examination, initiate the test, perform their testing. It's reviewed by the lab supervisor prior to being sent to the contractor. The contractor then takes appropriate action on the sample as per their contract and sends it generally to the CA for further review. The CA confirms the disposition of the test results and closes the record accordingly. So in Kahua, we'll launch. Let's start as an inspector. Actually, let's start as a contractor. So generally, the contractor will be the one creating the records. In order to create the record, we will go in as the contractor. We'll go to our apps menu and we will type in MISX, and we'll see that the application comes. You select the application and you come to the log view of the application. In order to collect a new sample, you click on New. You'll be presented with a split screen view of the new sample as well as your previous samples. I'm going to go to a larger view so it's easier to see. In this stage, the contractor enters as much information as they know in order to complete the record and pass it on for further editing. So the contractor would enter the test code sampled by the contractor. If the contractor's name is not in the list, they can produce not in the list and it switches to an alphanumeric entry. Witnessed by, this would be the inspector or the contractor representative who's there to witness the sample. Contractor contact, this is the contractor who will receive tasks moving forward with the sample as it progresses through the system. The contractor one today. Waybill, these are optional fields. If there's no asterisks, the fields are optional. Sample, the contractor can enter contractor sample information here. And the contractor will have to upload a copy of the sample data sheet. This is a mandatory attachment to add a sample data sheet to the record. So for now, let's say the contractor doesn't know any more of the information. They don't know the lab. They don't know the item number. They'll save and close the record. From there, the inspector or the CA can log in, also accessing the MISX app in the same way. They can go to the record that's marked as in draft, access the record, click edit. Begin, you see that all the information is retained. From here, the inspector can enter in remaining information. So they'll select an item number, they'll enter a lot number and a sublot number. If sublot is not applicable, simply type 0 or enter the actual sublot number. Now I am the inspector. I know that we've selected these seals for this test. So we're going to select these seals and add them to the contract. Now, I don't know which QA lab contract it's going to go to, so I could save it and then the CA could come in and edit that, or I can just select the lab that we're using, save and close. And now that the record is complete and been saved, I have the option to submit. From there, we will see that the ball in court, the status has moved to CA review, and the ball in court is pending on the MTO CA. MTO CA, same, they can access the app through apps and typing MISX, or they can come to their task because the ball in court is now pending on them and the task is for the CA. Click on the record. Now, the record has generally been filled out prior to this. If we need to make the screen larger, we can always grab and make the screen larger this way as well. So the record has been completed by a combination of the CA or the inspector and the contractor. If there was any missing information, the CA would enter it and make sure that the record is complete. Let's add a CA comment. From there, we can save the record. At any point, we can click more information and the record will move back to the previous user. For today, we will click Submit. And we can see now our tasks have changed. But if we go to the MISX app, the record, here, test 1, 2, 3, the status is in sample examination and is pending on our lab technician. So the lab tech would log in. Lab tech, same thing. Apps can access the app through searching and getting the app test name, going to the MISX app, or here they will have a task. From there, the sample is selected. Now, for our lab technicians, we'll be using a combination of licensed and unlicensed users. If we need to send the record to one of our unlicensed users, the lab technician who receives the task can click Delegate, and from there they would select the technician that they want to send it to. It transports the task to that user and they can edit the record. For today, we will just complete it as the lab technician. So the lab technician, their job here is to do a sample examination. Let's make this screen larger so we can see better. And so now we need to mark in the date and time that's received. This must be a date and time in the past. I will just enter a random date and time here. You can enter them all manually, or we can click copy to all and it will populate the rest. And to enter a name, same thing, click copy to all. Now we need to examine the sample. Is the sample okay for testing or is a non-conformance required? For now, we will use all samples as okay. And a date and time that the examination was done. If you choose not to do the examination at the same time as receiving, you can save the record and you can come back to it at any point through the task or through the MISX app. Okay, so our record is ready and we will submit the record. So we've done received and examined the sample. We are ready for test initiation. So now we can see we have a subject of test initiation attached to that record, still with the QA lab tech. So the QA lab tech comes in, test initiation. They come down and choose what the samples will be used for. Testing, holding for referee, an EMO information sample, or on hold. This on hold is designed only to be used by EMO users. So we're going to have 2 samples for testing and 2 samples on hold for referee. And we will submit the record. Now the sample is ready for sample testing. So again, we are in our tasks. We are logged in as the QA lab tech, and we can see that sample testing is ready to be completed. And in here, we can go to the test results section. So here we can enter any test results that we want to manually. We can copy and paste. This will be actually this will be a normal text box when you guys see this. I'm in a different environment today, so we will have a regular text box. Primarily, what we'll be using is this mandatory attachment for the lab test report. We'll click upload, attach. And obviously, this name is incorrect, but attach a record that includes your lab test report. Click OK, and select who tested the record. So I am the lab tech and I did this testing. I can add a comment if I want. I can add other references, but I'll primarily be using this one is the mandatory attachment, the lab test report. So from here, again, I can click more information. If I need to send it back to a previous step, I can save it if I want to come back to it later, or I can click submit. Okay, so if we go to the MISX app, we can see that the record is now in test results review. So it's time for a QA lab supervisor to come in. QA lab supervisor, same thing. Access the app through the apps menu. Material MISX app is what we're looking for, or they also receive the task. So the QA lab supervisor will log in. They'll have a task stating that they need to review the test results. QA lab supervisor, go down to the test results section, review the results. They can make sure that the test report is attached appropriately, make sure that the technician's name is correct, enter in that they have reviewed it. I'm the lab supervisor and I have reviewed it, and I am finished. Again, anybody can enter comments at any time. Submit the record. So we can see that the record is removed from my task section. I can go to materials. I can see test 1, 2, 3, the one that we're working on, is status. It's in contractor review, and the ball import is pending on the contractor. So the next user that we would expect to action the record would be the contractor to log in, go to their tasks, or they can access through the MISX app. We can see test results for contractor review are available here. Contractor would access the record, then come down to contractor review. So the contractor review would review the test results here, and they would then see if they agree with the test results, and they have to make a decision. So do the test results meet the contract requirements? Yes. They submit to the contractor, or sorry, to the CA. They can say that they're pending ERS. So in a sublot system, if we're waiting on an ERS and we don't actually know if the test results meet the contract yet or not, we can select pending ERS and submit it to the CA for CA review. If they do not meet the contract requirements, we can close with a non-conformance report, or we can invoke referee testing. So for now, let's go with yes, the test results meet the contract requirements. We'll submit to the CA for CA review. Now we'll see logged in as the CA. CA gets a task. This record here that we're working on is ready for CA review. Now, one thing to know is that if the contractor is not completing their responsibility to review the test results, the record does not get held up in the contractor review. The CA can log in at any time, go to the Materials MISX app, access the record manually rather than through a task, and at that point they can action the record without contractor input. The record will not be held up waiting on a contractor. However, after this, if the CA does have to action the record in this state, the contractor will not have opportunity for further input. So the CA results review. Here's where the CA will either agree, yes, the samples meet the contract requirements, and they'll have the ability to close the record. They'll have the ability to say that it's actually pending ERS and close the record so that it is putting in a pending ERS state, or they can say no, it doesn't, and close the record with an NCR. So you can see here that with the contractor or with the CA selecting no, it doesn't create a referee option. If we do think that maybe there's a reason it needs to go to referee, we can push more information and send it back to the contractor. If the contractor's verbally told you that they want to go to referee, this is when we would send it back to them so that they could select referee testing. If the CA notices there's an issue with the test results, perhaps there's some information that's missing, they can push incomplete test results and the record will be sent back to the QA lab for further review. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to close this record pending ERS, and there is a section for CA review. So we have ERS, we are pending ERS. So we will close it, we can add comments, and we can add attachments at any time. Let's close the record pending ERS. So in the MISX app, we can see the status of this record has been changed to closed pending ERS. There is no ball in court listed because the record is in a temporarily closed state. However, once the CA has completed ERS, which will have to be outside of the system temporarily, for now, the CA will then come back into this record. So the CA does not have a task waiting for them. The CA must know that they need to come back and action these records that are closed pending ERS following completion of the ERS record. They will come in, they will mark the record as ERS complete. This is the only action that the CA has to take at this time. They could choose to attach the ERS report to the record, but at this point they would have circulated the ERS to the contractor outside of the system. So we click ERS complete. Now we can see that the status of the record has changed. The status is now back to contractor review. and we have the ball in court of pending on the contractor. So as always, the CA has options to action the record if the contractor does not. However, let's go back to our contractor role. And we'll see here the contractor has a task. This test result is back into contractor review. Select the record. Come down to the contractor review section, and we will see that we now have the option. We've been marked, the record has been marked as ERS complete, so we know that that's what's happened here, and I need to provide a new disposition. So from there, I will either say that yes, they meet the contract, no, they do not, or that pending ERS is really not an option because ERS is complete. So if we clicked yes, it will just go to the CA for review, and we looked at this earlier. Let's look at one of our no options now. So no, create a non-conformance report. I would select here, and what this does is this actually closes the record without further CA review and generates a non-conformance report. The contractor would then go to their apps menu, go to the non-conformance app, and they would have a non-conformance that's been generated. We can see here, this is one I created earlier, material non-conformance with our contract number, the test number, and the record number. This is just a blank non-conformance that has been auto-populated. The contractor must complete the rest of this record and submit it to the CA for review. Let's go back to our record. So we're here. I'll show you now what would happen if the contractor chooses to invoke referee testing because the record does not meet the contract. However, they disagree with the test results. Contractor can select invoke referee testing and submit the record to the CA. So the record is now moved from our task section, and it is going to be moved into the CA's tasks. So we can see as the CA, we're logged in, we have a test. This is the record, CA results review. We'll open the record. And we will jump to the CA review section. And we'll see here that the contractor has selected no, these results do not meet the contract. The contractor has invoked referee testing. And the contractor will, or the CA will decide what's going to happen from here. So they can select that no, they do not meet. They can deny a referee request. Perhaps the contractor is out of time, or for some reason the referee test is invalid, or they can close it with an NCR. However, for now, the referee process is not working in the system. So the CA will go outside of the system and perform a standard referee request. When the referee request is complete, the CA will come in, they will upload the completed test results to the test record using the references, save it. So now that the referee is complete, the CA can mark in the comments section, referee is attached for contractor review. And send the record back to the contractor using the more information button. So we'll go back as the contractor. See that this record has been moved back into contractor review. Move down to the CA review section. We'll see no. We'll see that it did not meet and that the referee form has been attached for the contractor review. So at this point, the contractor would either choose that yes, the referee was in the contractor's favor and the test results meet the contract requirements, or they would select no and create a non-conformance report. At this point, let's show a record closed with a non-conformance report. They select no, the record closes, it's removed from the task. And if we go into the app, we can see that the record has been closed with an NCR. So the status of the record has been moved to closed, NCR. There is no ball in court because the record is closed and no further action is required. And we can see the contractor review. We can see that the non-conformance report has been generated and the non-conformance record is here waiting on the contractor to action. Okay, we're going to spend some time now to show how the sample non-conformance workflow works. This is a little bit more of a complex workflow, but generally fairly intuitive when we follow it through the system. So from the lab sample examination step, the lab technician would identify that there's a non-conformance with the sample. It moves into a lab sample non-conformance initiation step where the lab identifies the issue with the sample. The sample moves to CA non-conformance review, where the CA then reviews it, has an opportunity to provide input, send it back to the lab for more information, or send it through to the MTO QAO that's assigned to the contract for QAO review. From there, the QAO can add some comments to the record and provide their comments back to the CA, where the CA will make the decision on the final disposition of the sample. The CA can choose to close without testing. They can choose to resample, or they can choose to advance to testing with the sample as it is. Now we'll move in to Kahua, and I will show you how this workflow works. So I've already pre-created a record here. We have a record that is here ready for our review. So we've created the record the same as every other record gets created. We are here, we are time for sample examination. This is when the contractor or the lab technician would receive the sample and enter in the information here. Now we'll see that generally everything is okay, but actually let's show you even that we have multiple samples with non-conformances associated with them. Date and time. And again, I am Technician Joe. Okay, so here you can see that I've created a sample non-conformance. So I would click sample non-conformance. I no longer have the option to submit to testing because there is a sample non-conformance. I can move back with information incomplete if I realize that maybe sample data sheet or something is missing from the record. But from here, I would generally move to a sample non-conformance. So still logged in as the lab technician, we can see that the lab sample non-conformance initiation is required. Click on the record. That was in our task view, or we can get to it through the material MISX app as always. So we'll move down to the sample non-conformance section. So this is where we can see these are the two samples that were identified as non-conforming, and we need to select what was wrong with them. So let's say the security bag was damaged on one and the sample info was not complete or conflicting on the other. And in here, we would add our remarks. So maybe this is 1197 tag number, and maybe this one is 1198 tag number. You can enter in as much as you want. This is an alphanumeric field. Enter in any valid information there to let the CA know what's wrong with those samples. You can also upload pictures using the Kahua references down here to document exactly the issue with the samples. So from there, we would submit the record for the CA to review it. So this is the record that we've created. We're in the MISX app, but you can also access through your tasks. The CA I'll show you here. The CA has a task, sample non-conformance, CA review step. So let's access the record here. And we'll move down to the sample non-conformance section. So here we can see what's happened. We can see that the security bag was damaged. Here's the remarks entered in by the QA lab. We have an opportunity to enter any comments. I can say, I agree, the bags are damaged. And I can submit, I can always more information back to the lab. If something is missing, I need a picture or something added that wasn't added, I could say, please add a picture and push more information. For now, we'll move this ahead in the workflow to the QAO. So we've submitted the record. And I'm just going to quickly log in as Any QAO. Okay, as the QAO, we come in here, we come to our task section. We see there's a non-conformance requiring MTO QAO review. Click on the task. Now, perhaps we're in a region where maybe there's multiple QAOs on a single contract and this has come to the wrong QAO. We can delegate it to another QAO, or we can review the records ourselves. So we'll move down to the sample non-conformance section. We can see the sample non-conformance that has taken place. It's all documented, and we can see that the CA agrees the bags are damaged. Now let's pretend the QAO decides to please obtain new samples. So this is where the QAO would provide their input on the sample non-conformance process and submit the record back to the CA. CA receives another task. So we're in the task section. We can see that our sample non-conformance CA decision required has come in as a task for us to complete. We'll move down to the sample non-conformance section. And now is when the CA makes the final decision as to what we're going to do. So we have the options to proceed with test sample, request a new sample, or to close without testing. And we don't necessarily have to have the same. We could proceed with one test sample, but decide that perhaps one of the samples needs to be replaced. They can enter in a preventative action that's required and any remarks that are required or any comments. So from here, we're going to recommend resampling because one sample was marked as required. So now this is one situation that is unique. We will move to the contractor. My record is just taking a moment to populate. Here we go. Here's the record that I'm looking for. Sorry, sometimes I move a little bit quicker than Kahoot can move when I'm working in multiple instances. So here we can see sample non-conformance, contractor resampling is required. So here is where we would come in as the contractor. We can see all of our previous information. We click edit in order to enter the record. We have very similar fields required as before. Who witnessed the sample, who took the sample, who witnessed the sample, and the date that we sampled it on. We can use the camera or the calendar, sorry, and select the date that it was sampled. And then we'll scroll down. We have new sample information that's required to be entered. So we will enter in here, new samples taken. And then we will upload an attachment as well, a sample data sheet to go with it. And then if we're logged in as the contractor, we may know the security seals, or we can save the record and the inspector can log in and add the security seals, or the CA can also log in and add them. So for now, we'll save and close the record. The sample for some reason is unable to be collected. The sample, you can click unable to collect sample and it will move back to the CA review step for further action, or we can submit and move forward. However, we're still missing the security seals. So we will submit to the CA review step. We will come in as the CA and we can see resampling review. Sorry, I clicked a little quickly on that. So we'll see the status is resampling review and the ball in court is pending on the CA. CA will see the sample information. They'll see that there's an attachment required. Attachment has already been added, so we don't need to add another one here. And then we have to add our new security seals. Okay, so we've taken 2 new bags, attach those, and we submit them to the QA lab for review. From here, the record moves back to the QA lab and follows very much of our original workflow that we had seen in a previous video. Sample comes in, and we move to see the samples and perform our sample examination. So here we have the fresh samples that have been taken. We'll perform our examination, put in our name as Tech Joe again. Now, one thing, so hopefully at this point, all our samples are okay, and we will select OK. We'll click submit, and the sample will move on for sample initiation, for test initiation, and then into testing. But we'll show you what happens if the occurrence happens where we have another non-conforming sample. We are limited to twice through this workflow. We'll enter our name here, and okay, we have another sample non-conformance. So still following a very similar workflow. We have the sample non-conformance review. We need to create a new sample non-conformance here. So this is the one that we had selected as having a non-conformance. We say perhaps this one is damaged or untestable. Enter in our remarks. Broken core, let's say. And we would submit to CA review. Here, we go in as the CA. Sample non-conformance CA review, very much similar to what the first time through was. See, we'll go to the new sample non-conformance. See what's happened. Okay, we've got a broken core. Agree, cores are broken. And we will submit to the QAO for review. So we logged in as the QAO now. We've got our task, QA review is required, a new sample non-conformance has occurred. So we select the new sample non-conformance, we come down here, we can see same thing as before. Okay, Tech Joe has identified we have a damaged broken core. QAO can enter their comments here. Untestable. Create non-conformance. And further action as required. And we'll submit it for the CA to make their final decision. And this is where things become a little bit different than the first time through the workflow. So we're logged in as a CA. We need to make our CA decision. You can see here, our decision is much more limited. We can either proceed with testing the sample if perhaps it's okay for testing, or we can close. We can't endlessly be taking new samples. So maybe just to show you how it would work here, if we click close, this just closes the record and there's no further action that can be taken on the record. Let's proceed with the test sample, recommend testing. And you can see I've made an error. There was an asterisk beside remarks. Please test sample. And we'll recommend testing. And so now we can see that we're right back to where we were before. Logged in as the lab technician. This sample, we're just waiting for it to come through. Here we go. Test initiation. And we can see that we're just down now to making our decision to what we will use the samples for. So which ones we're testing, which ones we're holding for referee, and we will continue through the rest of the standard workflow from here.